The silent sing. The vast chamber of the Galactic Alliance glittered with the bioluminescent forms of 100 different species. Crystalline beings from the silicon worlds hovered near methane breathers in containment suits, while the liquid form Immerse undulated in gravity-controlled bubbles. They gathered in a semicircle facing the central dais where the 7 elders, rulers of the oldest civilizations in the known universe, prepared to deliver their judgment. Captain Elena Reyes stood alone at the defendant's podium, her dark eyes reflecting the stars projected across the chamber ceiling. As the commander of Horizon Station, humanity's furthest outpost from Earth, she had been summoned to hear the Alliance's decision regarding humanity's place among the stars. The irony wasn't lost on her. After decades of peaceful exploration and cooperation, humanity was about to be put on trial, and she was their unwitting representative. The Council recognizes Elder Thask of the Meridian Collective, announced the chamber's neural translator. A being composed of shimmering light particles floated forward. When it spoke, its form pulsed with each word. For 3 cycles, we have deliberated on the human question. Their rapid expansion, their unpredictable behavior, their emotional decision-making, all present risks to the careful balance we have maintained for millennia. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but maintained her diplomatic composure. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. Their rapid expansion consisted of 12 outposts and a handful of colony worlds, hardly a threat to a government spanning thousands of systems. The evidence suggests, Thask continued, that without intervention, human influence will destabilize established protocols within 1 generation. Their technology advances at an alarming rate, often without proper safety considerations. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Elena recognized the sentiment all too well. Fear, not of human aggression, but of human innovation. The Alliance species evolved slowly, their technologies developing over centuries rather than decades. Humanity's pace frightened them. Therefore, Thask's light form brightened dramatically. The Council proposes a quarantine. All human vessels will return to their home system. All outposts will be decommissioned. All wormhole access points to human space will be closed. This measure will remain in effect until such time as humanity demonstrates sufficient stability and restraint. Elena stepped forward. With respect, Elder Thask, humanity has violated no laws of the Alliance. We have shared our discoveries, participated in relief efforts during crisis, and contributed to scientific advancement. On what grounds do you propose to isolate an entire species? Elder Vex, a tentacled being from the ocean world of Aquilon, rose next. This is not punishment, Captain Reyes. Think of it as guidance. Your species needs time to mature, to develop the wisdom that comes with age. We mature through interaction, not isolation, Elena countered. This proposal would sever diplomatic ties, end scientific collaboration, and disrupt the lives of thousands of humans who work alongside Alliance species. The 3rd elder, a crystalline being named Corax, made a sound like chimes in the wind, their equivalent of dismissive laughter. Your concerns are noted, Captain. However, the decision has been made. Elena felt a cold realization wash over her. Made. Without a vote. Without allowing humanity to present a defense. The vote occurred yesterday, Corax replied. The decision was unanimous among permanent council members. Elena looked around the chamber, noting the absence of representatives from younger species, those who had most often worked directly with humans. This wasn't a trial, it was a formality. The sentence had already been passed. The quarantine will begin in 72 hours, Thask announced. All humans must return to their home system by then, or they will be in violation of Alliance law and subject to appropriate measures. As Elena was escorted from the chamber, her mind raced. 3 days to evacuate 12 outposts and recall hundreds of ships scattered across the galaxy. It was logistically impossible, which meant this wasn't meant as a quarantine. It was meant as a trap to catch humans in technical violations that would justify harsher actions. But why? Why now, when human-alliance relations had been stable for decades? The quantum communication array aboard Horizon Station hummed with activity as Elena connected to Earth's central command. The face of Admiral Chen appeared, lines of worry etched around his eyes. "Captain Rice, your report is disturbing," he said after she'd briefed him. "But it matches intelligence we've been gathering. This isn't about human behavior, it's about human discovery." "What discovery?" Elena asked. Chen's expression darkened. 3 months ago, the Artemis research vessel found something in the Ta City system, an ancient technology predating the Alliance by millennia. Data suggests it's a communication system of unprecedented power and reach. Elena leaned closer to the screen. "The Alliance knows about this. We believe certain members of the Council learned of it shortly after we did. The quarantine isn't about containing human unpredictability. It's about containing human knowledge." The pieces fell into place in Elena's mind. "They're afraid we'll use this technology in ways they can't control." Chen nodded. "Or worse, that we'll discover truths they've been hiding. Captain, I'm sending you classified access to Project Beacon. It was a contingency we never thought we'd use, but now." He looked over his shoulder, then back at the screen. "Earth will comply with the evacuation order publicly, but we need time. Your station is the furthest from Alliance monitoring. You'll receive." The transmission suddenly cut to static. Elena tried to reestablish the connection, but the quantum link was dead. She turned to her communications officer. "What happened?" Lieutenant Diaz shook her head. "They've shut down the QE network, Captain. All links to Earth are severed." "That's impossible," Elena said. "The Alliance doesn't have the authority to." "Captain," her science officer called out. "Alliance vessels just emerged from worm space. 7 cruisers surrounding the station at equidistant points." Elena moved to the central display, watching as the massive ships took position. They weren't waiting 72 hours. The quarantine had already begun. "Message coming in," Diaz reported. The holographic display lit up with the face of Commander Varek, a reptilian saurian known for his rigid adherence to Alliance protocol. "Captain Rice, by order of the Galactic Alliance Council, Horizon Station is now under quarantine restrictions. Your communications have been restricted. You have 24 hours to prepare for evacuation and decommissioning." "Commander, the Council granted 72 hours, Elena protested. Varek's scaled face showed no emotion. "The timeline has been adjusted due to security concerns. 24 hours, Captain. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 24 hours, not even enough time to safely power down the station's experimental reactors, much less evacuate all personnel. Elena turned to her senior staff. "This isn't a quarantine. It's an ambush. They're creating conditions we can't possibly meet." "Why?" asked Dr. Navarro, the station's chief scientist. "What do they gain by forcing us into non-compliance?" "Justification," Elena replied grimly. "If we violate the terms, they can take more extreme measures against all of humanity." As if on cue, Elena's secure datapad pinged with an incoming transmission, not through the station's communication array, but through a hidden channel. The file was massive, downloading in encrypted packets. The source identifier simply read, "Project BACON." Elena's eyes widened as she scanned the first decoded fragments. "Admiral Chen got through," she whispered. "And now I understand why the Alliance is so afraid." While her crew prepared for the inevitable evacuation, Elena secluded herself in her quarters, reviewing the Project Beacon files. What she found left her breathless. For decades, the Alliance had systematically suppressed human achievements, altered records of human discoveries, and redirected resources away from human interests. The quarantine wasn't a recent decision. It had been planned for years, waiting for the right moment. But that wasn't all. Scattered throughout the data were fragments of something larger, something the Alliance had been hiding from all younger species, evidence that the carefully constructed history of the galaxy was a fabrication. The last file was a personal message from Admiral Chen. Captain Rice, attached you'll find the activation codes for Project Beacon. This is a last resort, to be used only if diplomatic channels fail. Once activated, there's no turning back. The Alliance will consider it an act of war. But the truth is, they declared war on humanity the moment they decided to erase us from the stars. The choice is yours. Earth stands with you, whatever you decide. Elena closed the file, her mind racing with the implications. Project Beacon wasn't just a communication system. It was a revelation weapon, designed to broadcast unfiltered truth across every channel, to every system, bypassing the Alliance's carefully controlled information networks. If she activated it, there would be no hiding from the Alliance's retribution. But if she didn't, humanity would be silenced, contained, and eventually forgotten among the stars. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Commander Jackson, her second-in-command, his usually calm face lined with worry. "Captain, Alliance shuttles are docking. They're sending boarding parties to assist with evacuation procedures. Their weapons are armed." Elena made her decision in that moment. "Commander, initiate Security Protocol Omega. Seal all sensitive areas and prepare for potential hostile action." "That's a war footing, Captain," Jackson replied, his voice low. "If we resist, they've already decided what they're going to do." Elena cut in. "We're just deciding how history will remember us." She held up the data chip containing the Project Beacon activation codes. "And speaking of history, it's time we shared some inconvenient truths." The next 6 hours were a carefully choreographed dance of compliance and defiance. On the surface, Horizon Station prepared for evacuation. In reality, Elena's crew worked feverishly to integrate the Project Beacon protocols into the station's communication array. Alliance officers moved through the station, cataloging technology and supervising the shutdown of systems. They were everywhere except where it mattered most, the subspace communications hub hidden within the station's redundant power systems, a feature not included in any official blueprint. "They're getting suspicious," Jackson warned as he joined Elena in the hub. "The Saurian commander is demanding access to the main computer core." "How long do we need?" Elena asked Dr. Navarro, who was finalizing the beacon preparations. 10 minutes to complete integration, another 5 to bypass Alliance communication locks," the scientist replied without looking up from her work. "After that, it's just a matter of pressing transmit." Elena nodded. "Commander, give our guests what they want. Limited access to the auxiliary core. Have Lieutenant Park create some interesting security obstacles. Nothing obvious, just enough to keep them busy. And when they realize it's a distraction." Elena's expression was grim. "By then, it won't matter." As Jackson left to implement her orders, Elena turned to the central display, where a galaxy map showed thousands of potential reception points for the beacon transmission, not just official Alliance communication hubs, but every connected device in explored space. "The transmission window will be brief," Dr. Navarro explained. "Once the Alliance realizes what's happening, they'll shut down their entire network if necessary. We'll have maybe 3 minutes before they can implement system-wide blocks." "Will that be enough?" Elena asked. The scientist smiled for the first time in days. "To transmit everything?" "No. To transmit enough. Absolutely." Elena placed her hand on the activation console. "Then let's make those 3 minutes count." Outside the hub, alarms suddenly blared through the station. Commander Jackson's voice came through the comm system. "Captain, they've discovered the diversion. Alliance forces are moving toward the secure sectors." "Time's up," Elena said. "Initiate the beacon." Dr. Navarro entered the final sequence, then looked to Elena for confirmation. With a nod from her captain, she pressed the activation key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the hub's systems surged with power as the beacon protocols came online. On the display, connection points across the galaxy began to light up. one after another, like stars appearing at dusk. "It's working," Dr. Navarro whispered. "The truth is spreading." The door to the hub shuddered as something heavy slammed against it from the outside. Alliance security forces, no doubt. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the door gave way. But on screens throughout Horizon Station and across the galaxy, the Alliance's carefully controlled networks were being overridden by a simple message. They tried to silence us, but the truth cannot be quarantined. What followed was a cascade of unfiltered information, records of human achievements, evidence of Alliance manipulation, and most damning of all, fragments of ancient history that contradicted the very foundation of Alliance authority. As the door to the hub finally breached and Alliance security forces poured in, weapons raised, Alina Reyes stood tall beside the transmission console, a sad smile on her face. "You're too late," she told the Saurian commander. "The beacon is lit, and the galaxy is watching." Da revelation. Across the vastness of the galaxy, on thousands of worlds spanning countless civilizations, the routine of everyday life was suddenly interrupted. Entertainment systems, communication devices, research terminals, even the holographic displays in the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance, all simultaneously displayed the same unexpected content. On the methane world of Vortis Prime, Engineer Tulloch paused in his maintenance of atmospheric processors when his workstation suddenly displayed footage of human medics sacrificing their lives to save Vorgin children during the great collapse of their moon colony. He had been told that Alliance emergency teams had led the rescue, but here was undeniable evidence of human intervention, arriving days before any official response. In the crystalline cities of Saxum, philosophers gathered around public displays showing human scientists sharing breakthrough technology with their silicon-based colleagues, technology that had been attributed to Meridian researchers in official records. And in the private chambers of Elderthask, panic spread as screens displayed the very information the Alliance had worked for centuries to suppress. The true origins of their galactic government, built not on the peaceful cooperation they claimed, but on the systematic subjugation of younger species and the theft of their innovations. The beacon was working exactly as designed, not as a weapon, but as a light cutting through carefully cultivated darkness. On Horizon Station, Alina Reyes and her crew had been placed under arrest, confined to the station's detention center, while Alliance forces attempted to halt the beacon's transmission. Commander Varric paced outside Alina's cell, his reptilian features twisted with rage. "Do you understand what you've done?" he hissed. "Centuries of stability, threatened by your primitive defiance." Alina remained seated on the simple bench in her cell, her posture relaxed despite the circumstances. "Stability built on lies isn't stability, Commander. It's oppression dressed up as order. You humans are too young to understand." Varric replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Some truths are hidden for the good of all. The Alliance maintains peace. The Alliance maintains control," Alina corrected. "There's a difference." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a junior Alliance officer, his scales pale with distress. "Commander, we can't stop it," he reported. "The beacon transmission has replicated itself across too many systems. Every time we close one channel, it finds another." Varric turned on the officer with a snarl, then shut down the entire network. Every communication system, every data terminal, all of it. "Sir, that would paralyze Alliance operations across." "Do it," Varric roared. As the officer hurried away, Alina allowed herself a small smile. "It's too late, Commander. Even if you shut down every system in Alliance space, enough has been seen. The questions have started. And questions, once asked, have a way of demanding answers." Varric approached her cell, his face pressed close to the energy barrier separating them. "The Council will never allow humanity to." He was cut off by a sudden commotion outside the detention area. The doors slid open to reveal a delegation unlike any Alina had expected. Representatives from a dozen different species, led by a tall, elegant being Elena recognized as Ambassador Kira of the Lumina, a species known for their devotion to truth and knowledge. Commander Varric. Kira's melodic voice filled the room. By emergency order of the Extended Council, you are relieved of command. The detention of Captain Rice and her crew is hereby suspended pending full investigation. Varric's scales darkened with anger. The Extended Council has no authority over security operations. Only the Seven Elders can. The Seven Elders, Kira interrupted smoothly, are currently answering questions about certain historical discrepancies that have come to light. Their unavailability has necessitated emergency protocols. Elena watched this exchange with growing understanding. The Extended Council, composed of representatives from all Alliance species, not just the founding members, had seized the moment of confusion to assert authority long denied them. Ambassador Kira turned to Elena, her luminescent eyes reflecting a complex mix of emotions. Captain Rice, your methods were extreme, but they have sparked a necessary conversation. The Extended Council requests your presence at an emergency session. As the energy barrier to her cell deactivated, Elena stood, and my crew will be treated as honored guests while we untangle this situation. Elena nodded, then addressed her officers who were being released from nearby cells. Commander Jackson, Dr. Navarro, maintain Horizon Station at full readiness. I suspect we'll be receiving visitors once word of this reaches Earth. As she prepared to follow the ambassador, Varric called after her, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. This changes nothing. The Alliance has stood for 10,000 years. It will not be undone by one human's rebellion. Elena paused and looked back at him. You're right, Commander. Not by one human's action, but perhaps by the truth itself. The Grand Chamber of the Extended Council was nothing like the formal, intimidating space of the Seven Elders, hastily assembled in the Alliance's diplomatic wing. It was crowded, chaotic, and vibrating with energy as representatives from over 100 species debated the revelations still cascading through the information networks. When Elena was escorted in, a hush fell over the assembly, followed by a wave of murmurs. Ambassador Kira guided her to a central position where she could address the gathered representatives. Captain Elena Rice of Earth, Kira announced, architect of what some are calling the Great Revelation and others the Great Betrayal. The Extended Council has convened to hear directly from you before determining a course of action. Elena surveyed the diverse gathering. Unlike the carefully orchestrated sessions of the Seven Elders, this meeting included beings of all evolutionary stages, from ancient silicon entities to newly spacefaring organic species. This was the true face of the galaxy, diverse, chaotic, and alive with possibility. Representatives of the Alliance, Elena began. I stand before you not as an enemy of galactic civilization, but as a defender of its founding principle, that knowledge shared leads to growth for all. Project Beacon was not created to destabilize the Alliance, but to prevent the silencing of an entire species whose only crime was advancing too quickly for the comfort of those in power. A representative of the methane-breathing Vorgens rose, his translation device conveying his thoughts. The knowledge released includes evidence that Alliance founders have systematically claimed credit for technological advancements made by younger species, not just humans. Is this accurate? The data speaks for itself, Elena replied. I encourage every civilization to examine the records now available and compare them to official Alliance histories. Another delegate, this one a liquid form MRSA, bubbled with agitation. If these allegations are true, it represents a fundamental violation of the Alliance Charter, which guarantees equal recognition of scientific achievement, regardless of species origin. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations, some angry, others speculative. Ambassador Kira raised her hands, gradually restoring order. We face an unprecedented situation. Kira addressed the assembly. The foundation of our shared governance has been called into question, but we must not act in haste or anger. I propose a verification commission with representatives from all Alliance species to examine the beacon data and determine its authenticity. A crystalline being chimed in disagreement. The data flood continues. The network should be shut down until we can contain this information virus. Information is not a virus, countered a representative Elena didn't recognize, his insectoid features clicking with emphasis. And containment now would only confirm the accusations of suppression. As the debate continued, Elena noticed a disturbance at the chamber's entrance. 4 of the 7 elders had arrived, their usual ceremonial escorts replaced by grim-faced security forces. Their presence immediately silenced the room. Elder Thask floated forward, his light form dimmer than when Elena had last seen him. "This unauthorized gathering is dissolved," he announced. "Return to your worlds and await official communication from the proper authorities." No one moved. Ambassador Kira stepped forward, her luminescent form brightening in what Elena recognized as a display of determination. "With respect, Elder, this is a properly convened emergency session of the Extended Council, as provided for in Article 7 of the Alliance Charter, a document you seem to have interpreted rather selectively in recent times." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Elder Thask's form flickered with what might have been uncertainty. "The Alliance stands at a crossroads," Kira continued, addressing both the elders and the assembled representatives. "We can retreat into secrecy and suppression, or we can embrace a new transparency, one that acknowledges the contributions of all species and builds a truly collaborative future." Elder Vex, the tentacle being from Aquilan, moved forward. "You speak of collaboration, yet humans have violated our most sacred protocols, invaded our secure networks. To reveal truths you had already violated," Elena interjected. "The quarantine against humanity wasn't about protection. It was about preventing us from discovering what you've done to other species before us." "Enough." Elder Korax's crystalline form vibrated with anger. "This human has no standing here. She should be detained and—" "I believe," came a new voice from the entrance, "that Captain Rice has earned the right to speak for humanity today." All eyes turned to see Admiral Chen entering the chamber, flanked by representatives from a dozen non-Alliance worlds, civilizations that had maintained independent relations with Earth despite Alliance disapproval. "Earth received the beacon transmission," Chen announced, "as did every independent world in connected space. The question before us is not whether to hide this knowledge again. That option no longer exists. The question is how we move forward together, now that the truth is known." Over the next 12 hours, the most extraordinary session in Alliance history unfolded. Representatives from across the galaxy testified about achievements attributed to dominant species, but actually developed by their own scientists. Historical records were examined and found wanting. The careful mythology of Alliance benevolence unraveled thread by thread. Throughout it all, Elena and Admiral Chen represented humanity's interests, not with demands for reparation, but with proposals for reform. A new alliance structure that would recognize the value of all civilizations, regardless of their age or technological development. As the session neared its conclusion, a final vote was called to dissolve the Council of 7 Elders and establish a new governing body with rotating representation from all member species. "Those in favor," Ambassador Kira called out. The chamber illuminated with affirmative signals from over 80% of the representatives. Those opposed. The 7 elders indicated their opposition, joined by a small number of their closest allies. "The motion carries," Kira announced. "The Galactic Alliance enters a new era, one of true collaboration and shared growth." As the historic session adjourned, Elena found herself surrounded by representatives eager to establish direct relations with Earth. The quarantine had been officially lifted, and humanity's outposts, including Horizon Station, would remain operational under a new framework of mutual cooperation. Admiral Chen approached her with a rare smile. "You took an enormous risk, Captain," he said quietly. "I had faith in the better nature of most beings," Elena replied. Fear and control can only work for so long before someone asks the right questions. And now, Elena gazed around the chamber, watching as species that had been kept separate by alliance policy were now engaging directly with one another, sharing ideas and experiences without intermediaries. Now we build something better, she said. Something true. 1 month later, Elena stood on the observation deck of Horizon Station, watching as ships from a dozen different worlds maneuvered into position around the newly designated diplomatic hub. What had once been humanity's furthest outpost was now becoming the center of a new network of cooperation, one that extended beyond alliance space to include previously isolated civilizations. Commander Jackson joined her at the viewport. The Immerse delegation is requesting permission to establish a permanent mission on the station. That makes 17 species so far. Elena nodded, still watching the dance of vessels outside. And the Alliance reorganization. Proceeding smoother than expected. The Verification Commission has published its first report confirming the beacon data. 3 of the 7 elders have resigned their positions. The others are cooperating with the transition government. And Earth. Jackson smiled. The quarantine ships have been reassigned. Our colonies are secure, and outpost expansion has been approved under the new cooperative framework. We're officially recognized as full members of the galactic community. Elena finally turned from the viewport. And Project Beacon. Deactivated but preserved, Jackson replied. Admiral Chen feels it may serve as a reminder of what happens when truth is suppressed. A gentle alert chimed, indicating the arrival of visitors to the observation deck. Elena turned to see Ambassador Kira approaching, accompanied by representatives from several species that had previously been denied direct contact with humans. Captain Reyes, Kira greeted her warmly. The Transitional Council has completed its review of recent events. We've come to inform you of our decision personally. Elena straightened, preparing herself for whatever judgment had been reached. Despite the positive changes, she had still violated alliance law and expectations. There could be consequences. The Council recognizes, Kira continued, that extraordinary circumstances called for extraordinary measures. Your actions, while unprecedented, ultimately served the greater good of all civilizations. One of the other representatives stepped forward. A Vorgin whose child had been saved during the colony disaster, revealed in the beacon transmission. We have established a new position within the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador for Emerging Civilizations. The Council unanimously recommends you for this role. Elena blinked in surprise. Ambassador, I'm a station commander, not a diplomat. Kira's luminescent features formed what Elena had learned was their equivalent of a smile. Sometimes the best diplomats are those who recognize when diplomacy alone is insufficient. The galaxy is entering a new age of transparency and cooperation. We need leaders unafraid to stand for truth, even when it's inconvenient. As Elena considered the offer, her gaze returned to the viewport, where ships from worlds that had been kept separate for centuries now moved in harmonious coordination. The stars beyond seemed somehow brighter, as if the removal of alliance restrictions had illuminated not just information networks but the cosmos itself. I would be honored, she finally said, on one condition, that Horizon Station remains a center for unfiltered knowledge exchange. No more secrets, no more suppression, just the free flow of ideas across civilizations. That, Ambassador Kira replied, is precisely why we need you. Outside the viewport, a new ship emerged from worm space, an Earth vessel bearing the markings of the scientific court. The future was arriving, unfettered by the restraints of the past. Humanity had been silenced, then found its voice, and in doing so, had given voice to countless others across the stars. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that, Elena thought as she watched the new arrivals, was entirely the point.